Welcome into another edition of the DFO DFS Report. Happy holidays. Hope everyone had a great holiday. I'm sure most people, their holiday continues. Not here at Daily Faceoff, though. Our holiday has come to an end after a 3-day break. Back in the saddle in what feels like the Monday-iest Friday of all time. I've had to remind myself several times today that it is, in fact, Friday and the weekend is near. So, Zach, hope you had a terrific Christmas. Welcome back into the fold, bud.
Thank you, my man. Yeah, it was pretty good. Fairly quiet, all things considering. The mother-in-law is in town visiting, so we kind of kept things pretty quiet. Went out to the Elk Island National Park, just outside of Edmonton here yesterday, so that was pretty fun. Saw some bison chilling up there, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, man, ready to get back into the NHL DFS streets. It feels like it's been forever since we played an NHL DFS slate, even though it's only been like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, 3 days without it is feels like an eternity, especially when you just get absolutely caved in NFL in the meantime. Um, Back to DFS, we got an 8-game slate tonight. And just to let the people know at home, Zach is the only person at the Oilers Nation studio today. So shout out to him for working hard. But that means if anything goes wrong technically on today's show, it's going to be an absolute shit show. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well on this Friday afternoon. Let's get into tonight's 8-game slate. We'll start with the goalies as we always do. If you're new to the show, feel free to drop any questions you have in the live chat. We try to get to every single comment and question. And while you're in the live chat, please be sure, especially if you're watching on YouTube, to smash that like button for us, hit the subscribe button as well so you never miss an episode. Traditional week, unlike this week, Zach and I are live every day, Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. So stay tuned, and we'll be back next week. But here we go. Elvis Merzlikins confirmed to get the start for the Columbus Blue Jackets. It'll be Jonas Korpisalo up against his former team, getting the nod for the Boston Bruins. New Jersey Devils will ride with Jacob Markstrom. Most likely, it's going to be him against Petr Kochetkov for the Carolina Hurricanes. The Detroit Red Wings, they finally fired Derek Lalonde. They will be their first game under new head coach Todd McClellan. We'll get to that game in a little bit, but they just didn't even run line this morning. So, I mean, to add into just any uncertainty we have about this game, that's just another layer too. But Cam Talbot gets a start. He's been with Todd McClellan on a couple of stops, so back together again in Detroit. Joseph Woll likely to get the nod for the Maple Leafs, who will be without Austin Matthews yet again. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen up against Peter Mrazek for the Chicago Blackhawks. Joel Hofer gets the start for the St. Louis Blues. Will be likely UC Saros for the Nashville Predators. Jake Ottinger starts for the Dallas Stars. Philip Gustafsson confirmed to start for the Minnesota Wild, who will be without Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson-Ek this evening. Karel Vejmelka starts for the Utah Hockey Club. It'll be Mackenzie Blackwood, fresh off a 5-year contract extension. Just 4 games into his Colorado stay, they've seen enough to give him a $5 million contract extension. Probably the only goalie to ever get a contract extension that long while still wearing his old team's hockey gear. I keep wanting to upgrade his logo or his headshot here on dailyfaceoff.com, but he just hasn't got his new mask yet. So he still looks like he plays for the Sharks on the site. Alexander Georgiev's got a new mask in San Jose. He'll get the start tonight for the San Jose Sharks. Aiden Hill likely to counter him for the Vegas Golden Knights. Here we go. Let's start at the tippy top. With the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Boston Bruins. The Bruins, sizable road favorites here, minus 148 in Columbus. Now, the Bruins have definitely played better. They've been pretty hot lately. They've been better under head coach Joe Sacco. But at first glance, Zach, minus 148 on the road feels like a lot of love for the Boston Bruins. Now, the Blue Jackets kind of trending in the opposite direction right now. But at first, I looked at that line, and I was a bit taken aback by the size of, how big of favorites they are on the road tonight. How about you? Does that feel a little weird to you?
Yeah, it does. A little bit surprising. I mean, Boston, it felt like they were starting to really get on a bit of a roll heading into the Christmas break. I can understand why Columbus might be underdogs in this one. It does feel like it'd be a little bit closer to a pick 'em than, something like this with the minus 148 line. Columbus has been better at home than on the road this year too, and it doesn't really feel like that's factored into this game whatsoever.
Yeah, the Bruins, winners of 8 of their last 11 coming in. So obviously they're playing pretty well. The Blue Jackets, Elvis Merzlikins is struggled. He gets to start tonight. But let's break this game down. We'll start with the matchups here. Pretty low event game, all things considered. This game is drawing a hefty amount of ownership as well, but it projects to be fairly low event. Matchup-wise, not really great on the Columbus side of things, but pretty good, healthy matchups on the Boston side of things tonight. So Boston definitely going to be a team that we're interested in this evening, which is kind of funny to say because it was so long we were just like writing them off, but they really have turned things around. We've been talking about Boston 1 for a while now, that their offensive metrics have really come around with Morgan Geekie, Pavel Zacha, and David Pastrnak. David Pastrnak was hurt in their last game, left midway through, but he was on the ice for the morning skate, and Joe Sacco said he will be in the lineup tonight. So pretty good offensive numbers for them, pretty good matchup. On the whole here, they do grade out as the number 3 line to target at just 16,700. So a really nice looking line. Now, I always say, and again, maybe we've got some new viewers since the Christmas break. So the score and the power play XG, this is all from these charts, but the projections run completely separate from the charts themselves to give you kind of a different variety of ways to look at the game. And basically, if you ever see lines that project well from a raw projection standpoint and stand out in the charts, they're obviously a pretty good play. And that is the Boston Bruins tonight. Third best in the overall charts. If you take a look at the raw projections, they grade out fourth best. If you take a look at the value projections, they grade out number 1 overall. So the Bruins top line feels like a really good play tonight. They're in a really nice spot. They are projected for a decent a chunk of ownership, though. They come in as the second highest owned line on the entire slate. So, Zach, we'll start with Boston 1 here. What are you doing with them tonight? Are you planning on getting over that 13% ownership, or are you coming in under the field?
I'm going to be comfortable getting to that ownership here. It feels like a good enough spot. I mean, the numbers are really favorable here for Boston 1. You take a look at the matchups here tonight. They're going to see 30% of their ice time against the top line of the Columbus Blue Jackets, but 43% of their ice time is coming up against that third line. Pretty similar splits there for Boston too, although they're going to see a little bit more of that second line. The bottom 9 lines or the bottom 9 players, second, third, and fourth line. Guys, we're a little bit rusty here. We're coming off Christmas break. Cut me some slack. Second, third, and fourth line here for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Absolutely horrendous defensively. It does seem like a great spot here for the Bruins top line. I'm definitely going to be in on them. I'm comfortable getting to the field as a full stack here. I'll probably be over the field on Pastrnak, coming in at 17%. It seems like a really, really great spot here for them. Obviously, Pasta is the guy that continues to drive the offense for the Boston Bruins. 3.0 points per hour on the season, 11.9 shots on goal per hour. Just an absolute monster in terms of what you can get from a floor value. And he's somebody who can pop off with a great ceiling anytime. And it just feels like at $8,800, given the matchup here, feels like he should be a little bit more expensive in this spot, averaging just 13.4 DraftKings points per game, though, this season. Definitely comfortable getting to Boston 1 here. And you know what? I'm going to mix in some Boston too. I mean, they seem like they're in a good enough spot here as well. 13th best line to target overall on this slate. We've talked a lot about Brad Marchand really coming into his own this season here. $6,100. He's got a really nice floor so far this season, generating a lot of high quality scoring chances, a lot of expected goals, and a pretty good floor, 9.3 shots on goal per hour of ice time as well. So, Boston too, they're coming in around 10%. I think I'm pretty comfortable meeting the field on both of these lines.
Yeah, the second line for the Bruins, not quite as good offensive metrics, but still really, really solid. The matchup, maybe slightly better, but splitting hairs there. I think just the real difference here is obviously a considerable drop in ownership. I mean, nothing crazy, 13.4% for the top line, 9.4% for the second line. Elias Lindholm, you've been kind of hard on him in the past. He's looked a little bit better as of late. Nothing crazy, though, but at $4,600 doesn't feel like the worst play if you're looking for a center option tonight. And yeah, Marchand, I've been talking about him a lot. I've played Marchand more as a one-off than I have full stacking Boston too. I'll probably continue to do that. But yeah, at 13,500, they look like they're in a pretty decent spot. So, Boston chalk's definitely a little frightening. I don't think I want to be playing like 25% Boston tonight. But this obviously looks like a pretty good matchup. And honestly, when you take a look at this, slate as a whole, it is a little bit tricky to find these really, really good spots. So I think that's part of the reason why I'm a little bit more interested in Boston than I would be on a normal slate. There's just not a lot of spots that are really popping off that feel like outstanding matchups tonight. Some real lower event games tonight. So that's kind of why I have a little bit more interest in the Boston side of things. They also grade out with the number 3 power play advantage on the entire slate, 3.5 power plays per game, up against 3 time short-handed per game for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So they're projected for 3.2 power plays tonight, which is the second highest on the slate. Their power play has been really good. They do go up against a pretty good penalty kill lately, but the Bruins 10th best over the last 10 games. The Blue Jackets side of things now, they have the number 2 power play advantage. They're starting to garner some ownership tonight as well, 11% for them. The top line, really the only one worth even considering at this point. When you take a look at the offensive metrics, it's pretty bleak across the board outside of that top line. Matchup wise, as I mentioned, not great, but they do have just really, really strong offensive metrics. They fully correlate on that top power play unit as well with Voronkov, Monahan, and Marchenko. Just 15,800. Zach, you've definitely played more Columbus than I have. A lot of people in the Discord really like Columbus on a night-to-night basis as well. I haven't played them quite as frequently, but they've still been getting there more often than not. With Jonas Korpisalo getting the start, granted, he's been pretty solid so far this season, and it's not like Swayman's drastically outplayed him, so I don't know how much that really factors in. But the Blue Jackets here, the top line still looks like an okay play tonight. I'm just not sure how much I'm going to get there, especially, if they were lower owned, I think I would be taking some swings on him here. But given the fact that I don't already feel all that comfortable with the Boston chalk, and this has a really low pace score, the matchup's bad, I don't know how much Columbus one I'm going to get to. I might meet or get close to the field at about 10%. What are you doing with them tonight?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, Columbus One is seeing a lot of ownership for having a really terrible matchup score. I suppose the one saving grace here for Columbus One in terms of the matchup, 48% of their ice time is going to be coming against the top line for the Boston Bruins, who've given up 3.2 goals against per hour. That's a pretty high number there. One of two ways it's going to go here. Obviously, either Boston One is going to continue to give up these goals, or these numbers are going to actualize a little bit because they're not giving up a whole lot in terms of quality right now. So it's kind of an interesting spot because, given the fact that it is a low pace score and all this ownership that's coming in, you can kind of attack it one of two ways. I think it's a decent enough spot to fade some of this chalk if you're looking to get off of it, but I also don't mind eating it. It does feel like it's kind of one of these games that really has the possibility to kind of pop off offensively. You look at the rest of this slate here, and there isn't a whole ton of spots that feel really great. And I mean, even when you look at the ownership as a whole on this slate, Boston One coming in with 13.4% ownership, Columbus One coming in with 11%, Boston Two coming in with 9%. That's three of the top five lines in terms of full stack ownership on this slate. So I don't know. It's going to be kind of interesting. Maybe I'll change my tune a little bit and come in a little under the field on these games just to try and get different from the field. That's something that I do tend to do. But in the same breath, it also makes sense to kind of try and meet the field here with this chalk.
It is worth mentioning the first time these two teams met back in mid-November, it was a 5-1 Columbus win. That evening, we had 2 assists from Monahan, a goal from Chinikov, nothing really, a goal from Voronkov as well. So Marchenko did nothing in that game. He had 3 shots on goal, though. So I believe it was Monahan, Chinikov, and Voronkov by the looks of things that were the line that night. But they did win against this Boston team. That was a Boston team that wasn't playing nearly as good as they are now, but it is worth mentioning. They've scored 5 against this Bruins team already this season. We'll see if that Columbus team can stay hot against the Bruins this evening. The Devils and the Hurricanes. Now, these are 2 of the best 5v5 teams in the NHL. They're not just good offensively, they're very, very good defensively. When they've gotten together so far this season, we've had 2 6-goal games. So they haven't been, the offense has kind of won out in both of those contests. They haven't been, barn burners by any stretch, but it's capable of getting high scoring tonight. The implied total is pretty low in this one. So the sports books are expecting a kind of tighter checking, low scoring game, which I think is completely reasonable. You take a look at the matchups, it's brutal on both sides, but it does grade out with a pretty high event, a high pace score, actually the highest on the entire slate, which is pretty interesting, when you factor in how bad the matchup scores are. But it is an interesting game in that, New Jersey has been really, really good. But both of these teams as of late have been pretty snake bitten. I talk about this team chart all the time. I'm not going to bring it up all the time, and then I always bring it up. But both these teams are generating an impressive amount of expected goals for per 60 at 5v5, but both teams really struggling to actually find the back of the net recently. So the dam is going to break for both of these teams eventually. Whether or not it actually happens in this game, remains to be seen. Because the Devils' defensive numbers are insane. But the shooting percentages both below 8% is way too low for these two teams. So it is kind of an interesting game and what's going to actually happen here between these two teams. Now, the Hurricanes defensive metrics are much worse than we're kind of used to seeing out of them. And to me, if I were to target any side of this game, I do tend to lean towards the New Jersey Devils side of things more than the Hurricanes. We just haven't seen the Hurricanes play that spectacularly as of late. And then with the recent line combinations as well, I mean, the top line grades out okay. The second line really grades out pretty poorly. The third line, yeah, they grade out amazing all the time, but this isn't really a matchup in where you feel comfortable, or a slate in where you feel comfortable getting to a lot of Carolina 3. Yeah, they generate 3.9 expected goals for per 60, but they score at just 2.4. That's always been the case. So other slates, other matchups, I will get to Carolina 3. This isn't really one of them. So I feel fairly comfortable staying off Carolina for the most part. On the Devils side of things, when Stefan Nation's on that top line with Nico Hischier, the offensive metrics are just insanely good. They also grade out they correlate very well in the top power play unit as well. The Bratt Hughes line's been excellent as of late, so I lean more towards New Jersey Devils side of things. New Jersey 1 grades out 6th best overall tonight at just 2.4% ownership. New Jersey 2 grades out 12th best at just 1.8% ownership. So neither one of these lines seeing anything in terms of ownership tonight. Nation at 9%, Bratt at 0.5%, excuse me, Bratt at 0.5%. Are you interested in this game at all? Or are you going to be more on the public side of things and just kind of fading it? Before I get to you really quickly, Carolina 1 grade note for 0.5% ownership. Carolina 2 grade note for 0.4%. Like, there is literally nothing coming in terms of ownership in this game.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit surprised by that. I think, especially from the Devil side of things, I do tend to agree with you that if I had to lean one way, I'd probably go a little bit more towards this New Jersey side of things. I totally understand the interest in the top line for the Devils. The power play correlation with Hischier and Nason there is great. Nason has been absolutely awesome. Really been getting his tires pumped this season with what's been really just a great year for him. $4,600 on DraftKings, 1.7 goals per hour, 1.6 individual expected goals per hour, 8.6 shots on goal. He's providing a decent enough floor at his price this season. You know, for me, I still tend to lean a little bit more towards that second line with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. A little bit more offense coming in consistently through these two guys. Obviously, some correlation on the top power play unit. It really feels like Jack Hughes is kind of starting to turn a bit of a corner this season here. The power play matchups, as we see here, not necessarily the greatest for either side here. You know, even though 9th and 11th best power plays in the NHL in the last 10 games, you know, the pace score is what really intrigues me here. Highest paced game of the night. It feels like a little bit of a gross game to get to, but I think I'm going to be over the field here. And again, like, it's not that hard to get over the field in this game. You know, you play 5%, you play one full stack of any of these lines in your 20 max, and you're already over the field and getting different. And I really like that because we've seen both of these teams be high powered offensively. We've seen the goaltenders, both Kochetkov and Markstrom have some struggles so far this season. You know, Kochetkov, 21 games played, 903 save percentage, 1.5 goals saved above expected. Markstrom feels like he's turned a corner here as well as of late. 26 games, 912 save percentage, 7.6 goals above expected. I like the Devils second line a little bit more than the top line. I think it's reasonable to play both. The Carolina side of things, I mean, I've got some interest as well. I just don't really know where to go. Like, this is the issue we have with the Hurricanes, right? We never really know where this offense is going to come from. They've been blending their lines a lot lately. I like the look of the top line with Jarvis up there with Aho. I also like what the second line has done this year, but I just haven't felt like I've been able to get them right. And that is kind of my biggest issue there. Kokianemi, $3,400. He's been better than I think anybody really expected so far this season. Svechnikov, he's been great. Netchus, kind of going to start to come down to earth here a little bit in terms of these huge goal numbers that he's had this season. I just don't really know where to go on this Carolina side of things. And that's the issue that I have with getting to the Hurricanes tonight.
Yeah, I think, like, for me, if I do play the Carolina side of things, it's the Aho line, just because Aho has been just scorching hot. 7 goals, 14 assists, 21 points in his last 17 games. Rarely goes a game without a point recently. But yeah, I agree that more of my interest is coming in on the Hughes and Bratt line for me in this game. Both, kind of stealing your shtick here, but both of them have had success against the Hurricanes in the past. And both, the Hurricanes have been elite defensively for years. And I don't know if they're quite as elite as we've, as in recent years. Obviously, that blue line took some hits in the offseason, and I do think that they're a little bit more gettable than they have been. And I feel like New Jersey's in an okay spot here in deep tournaments, man. Like, when they're seeing no ownership, the Devils look like a great play tonight. Again, not 100% sure how much Carolina I'm going to get to, but yeah, there's some interest here in a game that's just seeing literally no ownership. Any final thoughts before we get to the Red Wings and the Maple Leafs?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with Hughes and Brad. I mean, Jack Hughes in the last 9 games played against the Carolina Hurricanes, 4 goals, 11 points. Brad, 7 goals and 12 points. I think that's the way that I'm going to lean in this game.
Worth mentioning that the last game these two teams played, the Devils won 4-2. And sorry, the Devils won 4-2, pulled up their own game, but it was Spencer Martin that got the start for the Hurricanes. So obviously a little bit more favorable there. But 2 goals, 1 assist for Bratt, 3 assists for Jack Hughes in that game. Stefan Nation also had a goal and an assist in that contest. In the first meeting, it was a 4-2 win for the Carolina Hurricane side of things. The offense, as you might expect with the Hurricanes, pretty spread out. But in that game as well, Jesper Bratt, 2 assists. Jack Hughes, a goal and an assist. Nico Hischier had a goal. So the top 6 of the Devils has found some success against this Hurricanes team already this season. And with no ownership, there's really nothing to worry about. There's just, just throw them in there and hope for the best in those deep tournaments. Okay, the Detroit Red Wings, pretty exciting time to be a Detroit Red Wings fan again. It's just lifeless under Derek Lalonde. Todd McLellan comes in, very structured coach. You're familiar with him during his time with the Oilers. He was the one that actually ended their playoff drought, if I recall correctly. And now he takes over in Detroit, where he was an assistant coach back in the day. But he was the guy that, I'm interested to see what he does with the Red Wings. Not to get too off topic here from a DFS standpoint, but he was like the guy that really seemed to bring the best out of Philip Deneau in LA and really did a nice job finding a great shutdown line and kind of freeing up the Kopitar line and Adrian Kempe to be a little bit more offensive while still being defensively minded. But if he can find that, which we're not going to see tonight, he's literally been with the team for 5 minutes, but if he can find a way to get Larkin's line in some more favorable matchups, I do think from in a future perspective, the Larkin line is going to become a little bit more viable in DFS again, just if they can try to find a way to free them up a little bit. So I'm interested to see what he ends up doing with these line combos if he can find his Philip Deneau here in Detroit. I'm not sure he exists, but we'll do his best, I guess. They will get Edvinsson and Sherratt back tonight, so that helps in the blue line, specifically Edvinsson. So that hurts the Maple Leafs a little bit. And then you factor in, obviously, that the Maple Leafs still do not have Austin Matthews this evening. So here's their new look lines. You're going to have Pacioretty, Tavares, and Marner together on the top line. Nyes, Holmberg, Nylander on the second line. And then McMahon, Domi, and Robertson back together, man. This third line has been just scorching hot. Which is hilarious. Basically, ever since you said Max Domi is a black hole of offense, he's been just the complete opposite. So, he was looking like Ty Domi for a little bit, but you fixed that for the Maple Leafs. In this game, the Tavares line and the Domi line actually have pretty reasonable matchups. You're going to see a lot of the Larkin line against the Tavares line, a lot of the third line against third line. Now, that's based off of how Derek Lalonde coached this team. We have no idea what Todd McLellan is going to do. So take everything you see in this game with a massive grain of salt. I really don't even know what the Red Wings are going to do. They said they're going to go with a familiar lineup. What that means, who knows? This is how they finished their last game. The chances of these actually being the lines at the start of the game tonight are like 5%. So it's impossible to break this game down like the way we want to and the way we like to. That being said, the Red Wings penalty kill, they're not going to change overnight. They're just not going to. They fired Bob Bugner. They bring in Trent Yawney. They're going to do their best to improve tonight, but it's probably not going to be the case. The Maple Leafs, still have not a great matchup score in terms of a power play tonight. The Red Wings penalty kill has been better lately, but it's been dog shit for the majority of the season. What are you doing with this game? Because it's so hard to break down from a matchup standpoint. I guess the way we can start is by taking a look at the ownership and what the public's doing. And it's not a whole lot. Toronto 1 coming at 4%. Toronto 3 seeing a little bit of a bump at 8,800. I think that's fine, right? I think the way they've played, I think that's reasonable. The Red Wings, not very deep. I think that's pretty reasonable to see Toronto 3 getting some ownership if you want to play those really expensive lines. But there's no ownership coming in on this game. And I do think it's a game that has the potential to be fairly high scoring even without Austin Matthews. What are you doing with this one?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I like the look of both of the top lines here in this game, as well as Toronto 3. I'm going to be playing, over the field on both of these lines. Again, just very little ownership coming in on this Toronto 1 side of things. My rule with the Toronto Maple Leafs is when they're under-owned, I'm going to play them. When they're over-owned, I'm going to fade them. I think that they're under-owned here. They're only coming in as the 16th best line to target. So just outside of my top 15 that I usually try and tend to target. But I mean, these three guys have been solid together so far this season. They're going to see about 29% of the ice time here tonight, 3.4 goals for per hour, even though they're not generating a whole lot offensively. I think in the same breath too, like we don't really know what to expect from the Detroit Red Wings, right? Like you got to imagine that a coaching change like this is going to light a bit of a fire underneath them. I think the Red Wings are going to play a better game here tonight. And I think that's a reason why I'm going to get on them here as well. I mean, you take a look at the top line as they're currently constructed, 4.3 goals for per hour of ice time. That's a really solid clip there. It feels like even leading up to Lalonde getting fired, they were starting to kind of find their way here. And I've got interest in jumping in on them here tonight for sure. Very, very little ownership. It's not going to be too difficult to get over top of the field on a team that's going to be highly motivated. It's 2 original 6 teams. These games always feel like they're fairly big. So fire me up for some Detroit 1 tonight, some Toronto 1 and Toronto 3. I'm going to play him here tonight as a way to get a little bit different and get some of these more expensive lines in. So Max Domi, Nick Robertson, Bobby McMahon, they're going goose eggs tonight because I'm going to.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, now that you're in on them, they're dead. They're 0 points across the board for all 3 of them for sure. Yeah, like the Red Wings were so lifeless prior to tonight. Like it's hard to really feel comfortable playing them, but at limited ownership, I'll probably take a few stabs on the top line. But again, you're going to want to wait until warmups before you even think about building around the Red Wings, because Lord knows what the line is going to look like. It is one of the first games to lock, so you will be able to pivot. But yeah, I have no idea what these lines are going to look like. It's rare that a coach comes in and we don't get lines, but we did see their power play, so I guess we can show you that. DeBrincat, Larkin, Kane, Raymond, Sider, they loaded up that top power play unit, which is great. But yeah, it's really hard. I think as a Red Wings fan and a guy that lives in Southwestern Ontario, and all of my friends for the most part are Leafs fans, beating them when we were playing like shit was awesome. I can't remember the last time the Red Wings beat Toronto twice in a row and I had that over top of my buddies, but like if that happens, like that would be great. I just don't see it. So I have some interest in Toronto just from that standpoint, where it's like there's no way the Red Wings beat them twice in a row, even without Matthews. But yeah, let's move on to the Sabres and the Blackhawks. The Sabres minus 155 home favorites up against the Chicago Blackhawks, who are plus 140, 2.8 implied total. Matchup wise, pretty good on both sides. When we get to the Sabres defensive metrics, you're going to be like, I can see how they lost 13 in a row there for a second. But yeah, both teams have good matchups in this game. So there's reason to have interest in both sides here. The offensive metrics, though, in this game are bad. Not a whole lot going on. The top line with Zucker, Thompson, and Tuck, okay offensive metrics, just not great. It's crazy to think like these 3 guys shoot the puck a fair amount. To see them with a 50 Corsi 4 is a little bit surprising. I wouldn't be surprised if that number comes around a little bit. But their matchup, they're going to see a lot of kind of the top line of the Bedard line. They're going to go head to head there. The Bedard line has been a little bit better defensively as of late, so not like the elite matchup, but the elite matchup actually looks like it's for the Bedard line as they go head to head with the Tage Thompson line, which with Zucker and Tuck has really struggled defensively. They haven't really given up the actual goals, but they've given up 41 scoring chances against per 60, which is atrocious. So again, like the ownership in this game doesn't seem to be too crazy outside of Buffalo 2. Peterka, Cousins, and Quinn are drawing plenty of ownership. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot. Chicago 1, 10th best line to target on the slate, coming in at 5%. And then Buffalo 1 coming as the 20th line to target at 4% as well. So not a whole lot of ownership coming in on this one either. Chicago 1 grades out the best. Hall, Bedard, Bertuzzi. It's the first time this season we've seen a reasonably long stretch with Bedard playing with kind of 2 of the better wingers in Chicago, in Hall and Bertuzzi. So let's start with them. The matchup obviously looks good. I will say that the sample size of Buffalo 1 together, like where they've been this bad defensively, isn't huge. It's like 75 minutes, but they were so bad defensively that's like you have to. I had to include it because it's like if I don't, I'm just lying to you. So Chicago 1 looks like they're in an okay spot tonight. This is, a Buffalo team that's coming off of a big win, but one big win doesn't make me forget about the atrocious play they had for a month prior to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fire me up on some Chicago 1 here tonight. I like this spot. You take a look at their matchups here tonight. They're going to see 45% of their ice time going up against that Tage Thompson line. I would like to have seen them getting a little bit more against the second line because, man, Buffalo 2's defensive numbers are absolutely horrendous. 5.4 goals against per hour of ice time is egregiously bad. And what's really interesting too, as John makes a great point by hitting the smashing the like button, Buffalo 2 offensively, they've not really been that great either here. I understand why there's some ownership coming in their way, projected for about 10% tonight on this slate, which is, far and away the highest owned line here from this game. It makes some sense, right? Jack Quinn at $2,800. He's giving you a solid floor. His shot volume starting to come up a little bit. But Dylan Cousins, he's really, really struggled offensively this year. JJ Peterka's done some nice things, but even still, it just feels a little bit gross to me that Buffalo 2 is seeing so much of this ownership. So I'm comfortable coming in under the field on them as a full stack, coming in over on Chicago 1. I've got some interest in Buffalo 1 here as well. But again, I'm not ready to overreact here on this Buffalo Sabres team in that they've finally turned it around because they won one game. You take a look at their 5v5 scores. Buffalo 1 coming in at 20th, Buffalo 2 coming in at 30th. Those are pretty low marks there in the grand scheme of things for this slate. So I'm pretty comfortable, coming in under the field on Buffalo 2 and coming in over on those other two spots that I mentioned.
Yeah, and I think part of the intrigue about playing Buffalo 1 is exposure to Tage Thompson and his elite floor, and it just hasn't been the case lately. He's not shooting the puck at all. He has 6 shots in his last 6 games. He has more than 2 shots just once in his last 9 games. He had 1 5-shot game. That was it. He has 13 shots total in his last 9 games. If he's not shooting the puck, what is he doing? Yep. So, the matchup looks good. I think it's reasonable, but I think part of the reason why people or the public are getting to Buffalo 2 is Jack Quinn's on the top power play unit, and then you've got JJ Peterka on the top power play unit as well. So obviously a line that's had success in the past. They just haven't been good together this year. We've talked about it a bunch. And then you look at the power play. Their power play sucks, and Chicago's penalty kill has been awesome. And it's not just been 10 games of the power play penalty kill being pretty good. Chicago's boasted a pretty solid penalty kill this season. So they have the 14th and 13th ranked power plays in this game. In this slate. I don't really feel great about either side of this game, to be completely honest with you. I will probably have a little bit of exposure to this game as a whole. But yeah, I think most of my interest comes in on that Chicago side of things. They're 31st on the power play, but they've, for the most part this year, been okay on the power play. They were I think 6th at one point in terms of power play percentage. So the power play has the ability to bounce back against a Buffalo penalty kill that's 22nd over their last 10 games. Just to pull up the Blackhawks power play here. You've got Bedard, you got Bertuzzi and Seth Jones. Obviously, Taylor Hall in the second unit isn't ideal, but you still have some power play correlation there with Bedard, Bertuzzi. They have a pretty good 5v5 matchup. So I feel okay about getting to Chicago 1. Again, they grade out 10th best. They feel like a strong play at just 5% ownership. I'm in here. So Tage is only playing 17 minutes a night lately too. Yeah, that's another big difference maker. He is averaged 18 minutes over his last 9 games. Over his last 5 games, he's averaged just 16.57. So it's not ideal right now with Tage Thompson. And yeah, the price tag is still, as if he's shooting the puck 10 times a game. And that's just not been the case. Where is he? 20th, you said? Yeah, $8,000. There's just so many better plays on the slate. Any final thoughts on this game before we get to the Blues and the Predators?
Nope. Let's move on.
Okay, here we go. St. Louis 2.7 implied total, plus 122 home favorites against the Predators. Now, this game, I talked about at the top with the Bruins game. I think this is probably giving the Predators a little bit too much credit as well. They've definitely been better lately. Don't get me wrong. The Blues, though, grade out tremendously defensively with these line combinations, which surprised me a little bit. To me, this game looks pretty low scoring. It's not a game that I have too crazy amount of interest in. It is worth mentioning that the Predators have been better offensively. 4 goals against the Penguins, 3 goals against the Kings, and 5 goals against the Hurricanes in their last 3 games. So have they figured things out offensively? We shall see. But the matchups don't look great. It looks pretty low event. You take a look at the line stats. The top line for the Blues grades out very, very well. They're going to see a lot of the new top line for the Predators, which is that Stamkos, Forsberg, Marchessault line. Now, they've been awesome offensively, but they've been really bad defensively. Saros has kind of saved their ass, 1.3 goals against, but they play very high event hockey, and I think that opens things up a little bit for St. Louis 1. But I do think St. Louis 1 can do a pretty good job keeping them off the score sheet tonight, you look here at the Corsi for here and the Corsi against for St. Louis. They play a much lower event game. So they're probably going to slow things down, clog up the neutral zone a little bit, and limit Nashville one quite a bit in this game. I don't think you're going to see Nashville getting too carried away. So to me, this game doesn't look like one that's going to be overly high event, super high scoring. I actually have quite a bit of interest in Joel Hofer between the pipes tonight. I believe he is $7,300. Feels really good against this Nashville team at home. He is seeing 9% ownership, which is the second highest on the slate. But I like Joel Hofer a lot. So I think that maybe that's kind of confusing my brain and trying to find the avenue in which the Predators aren't going to score goals tonight. But like, similar to some of the teams we talked about already, are we really going to buy in on a very small sample size of this team's back? Like, yes, it is nice to see Marchessault, Stamkos, and Forsberg having some success, but they've also kind of just been pretty fortunate, all things by the looks of things, like 2.8 expected goals for, 4.9 actual goals for. That's probably going to normalize itself. Same with the defensive side of things. So honestly, most of my interest probably comes in on the St. Louis side of this game, especially Joel Hofer between the pipes. But St. Louis one grades out very, very well. Seventh best overall, just $13,800. Neighbors, Thomas, Buchnevich, just 5% ownership. They did shuffle up their power play this morning. Neighbors was bumped from the top unit, but you still have Thomas and Buchnevich there. Cam Fowler also looks like a pretty good value option on the blue line. Holloway and Kyrou up there as well. If you have any interest in the second line, they are together there on the second line. Their offensive metrics pretty solid as well. Their matchup pretty solid as well. They're going to see a lot of Nashville 2 tonight, which is, not terrible defensively, but not great either. What are you doing with the St. Louis Blues Nashville Predators game tonight?
Yeah, I've got an interest in this game. I really do. St. Louis won. They're still too cheap for me. Jake Neighbors, $3,700. Pavel Buchnevich, 4,200. We're seeing Thomas starting to creep back up into the 6K range, 5,900 tonight. So that's pretty interesting to see. Again, I still think that they're just too cheap for what they can do. I'm playing them in my DFO head-to-head tonight. I got a little Jake Neighbors, Pavel Buchnevich mini stack to provide some salary relief. Again, as you mentioned, the seventh best line on the slate to target. I think that they're a solid play here tonight, 5.4 projected ownership. I think that's pretty fair. It's pretty interesting to see the St. Louis second line coming in with a little bit more ownership, 7.2%. They grade out well as well, 17th best, just on the outside of my top 15. I've got some interest in playing them as well. Dylan Holloway has been just awesome so far for St. Louis. Jordan Kyrou continues to be a solid play at 6K. I'm going to be playing both of these top two lines, probably at maybe a little bit over the field. And honestly, I've got some interest in Nashville one as well. It feels like this line is starting to find their stride. As you can see, 4.9 goals for per hour of ice time as of late. It's nice to see the offense starting to come around. Roman Yossi's back in the lineup. We've talked about, our interest in Nashville largely being there when Yossi is in. So I'm going to be getting there tonight too on Nashville one. Like, I don't think I'm going to be going crazy or anything like that, but 5-10% of my 20 max feels like a decent enough play here tonight. I do agree that I've got an interest in Joel Hofer in the crease. I think he's probably too cheap, for what he's been able to do. Solid so far this season, right? 12 games played, 909 save percentage, 2.8 goals saved above expected. I like him here tonight on this slate. But I again, like I said, I think there's some reason to play these top six lines. Obviously, Nashville one's matchup isn't the greatest here, but their line stats really do make up for it with just how much they've been scoring as of late. So I'm not going to go crazy here with ownership or anything like that, but you get some salary relief with this Nashville top six, the St. Louis top six rather, and Nashville one grading out eighth best too. I think they're a reasonable enough play here on this slate.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we continue here, over 1,100 live viewers right now. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button. It really, really helps us grow the show. Helps us come live Monday through Friday. Power play in this game, as I fumble over my keyboard here. Not great for the St. Louis Blues side of things. 21st ranked power play up against the 4th ranked PK. The Predators go, not good on the power play, but they do grade out pretty good tonight. 4th best up against the 29th ranked PK. Obviously, getting Roman Josi back in the fold helps a lot as well. So yeah, I like Joel Hofer at his price tag, but this game as a whole, probably not one I will get to too much. I do agree that I think most of my interest is kind of just in the salary relief perspective. I think Cam Fowler, I think Dylan Holloway are good ways to get some salary relief, but probably not a team or a game that I'm going to get too carried away with either. Dallas and Minnesota up next. The Dallas Stars 3.4 implied total, 2.4 implied total for the Minnesota Wild. Obviously, that's changed drastically since open with Kirill Kaprizov getting ruled out. So we don't know 100% what the uh, Minnesota Wild lines are going to look like. We have an idea. We were able to try to piece things together. We know for sure that is not the Minnesota Wild. That Boldy is going to be on the top line with Rossi and Zuccarello. That's probably all you really care about, because when you look at this bottom nine, I don't think you're going to play them from a DFS standpoint. So the top line we know is going to be together. They draw an okay matchup up against the top six most of the night of this Dallas Stars. The top line for the Stars has been okay defensively. They grade out pretty slightly below average. The second line's been pretty solid, although they have given up plenty of goals. We don't know exactly what the Stars lines are going to look like either, but this is how they finished last game. They played like this for the last two periods the other night, with Bork on the top line, Blackwell on the second line, Dadonov on the third line, and Sankhoven on the fourth line. So we're expecting them to go back to that tonight. But again, this doesn't look like a game that's going to be super high scoring tonight. I think that I definitely have interest in Jake Ottinger. Obviously, he's priced as a goalie that has got a fairly difficult matchup up against what is a pretty good Minnesota Wild team. But then when you take Kirill Kaprizov out of the mix, suddenly Jake Ottinger looks way better. So, yes, interested in Jake Ottinger for sure tonight at $7,800. So is the general public. He's the highest projected owned goalie on the night. But overall, I think, the Wild are always a team that's pretty good defensively. You take out Joel Eriksson Ek, you take out Kirill Kaprizov. This is a team that's probably looking at this game saying, we have to win this game 2-1. We have to win this game low scoring if we have a chance. Philip Gustafsson's been great between the pipes. The Stars have been letdowns more often than not. Nobody really grades out well in this game. Minnesota won the best at 14th. Dallas, you find Dallas 2 down at 23. Dallas 1 down at 25. Not a whole lot to like about this game, in my opinion. Do you have any different feelings as I pull up power play, which grade 15th and 6th best overall? Both PKs have been amazing.
Yeah, I kind of really like the Dallas Stars in this spot here, which kind of sounds a little bit crazy to say, considering it is the Minnesota Wild and how good they've been as of late here. In the last 8 games played between these two teams, the Dallas Stars are 6-0-2. Their last 4 games, they have won against Minnesota, 2-1 win, 7-2 win, 4-0 win, and an 8-3 win. In these last 8 games played, Rupe Hintz, 6 goals, 11 points. Jason Robertson, 5 goals, 10 points. For whatever reason, they have found a way to beat the Minnesota Wild. You talk about Jake Ottinger in the crease for the Dallas Stars too. I really like him in this matchup here. 9 games played in the regular season against Minnesota in his career, 2.3 goals against average, 917 save percentage, a 6-1 record. These numbers look really solid as of what they've done as of late. You take a look at the line stats for Dallas 1. They feel like they're starting to really come into their own here this season. We're probably going to see these numbers start to get a little bit better and a little bit better. But they're still too cheap, man. I mean, Rupe Hintz at $5,500, Jason Robertson $5,200. You got Maverick Bork up there at minimum price at $2,500. I think this is a great spot to kind of get yourself a little bit different if you're comfortable taking on a bit of the risk here of going up against the Minnesota Wild. Obviously, them without Kirill Kaprizov really kind of changes the tune for them, especially offensively. So I don't really know if I have a whole lot of interest in getting to this Minnesota Wild side of things. And the ownership numbers are still fairly low, all things considering, in this game. Dallas 1 projecting for 4.6%, Dallas 2, 2.6, Dallas 3, 5.9, Minnesota 1, the only line that's seeing ownership there at 6.4%. So I'm comfortable getting over the field here. Especially on Dallas 1. They do grade out 25th best, which isn't necessarily anything to write home about, but just looking at this past success that they've had against them, I think it's pretty easy to get over the field on Dallas 1 with where they're at right now. They're really cheap, man. I mean, $13,200. We talk about St. Louis 1 and St. Louis 2 being solid salary relief options. I think you can put the Dallas Stars right there with them as a great way to kind of save some money on this slate.
Yeah, as Jim points out in the chat, we have Dallas with the number 1 power play advantage on the slate. I scrolled down and was talking about Utah. I don't know if you caught me there, but Dallas does have the number 1 power play advantage on the slate. I missed that. The Wild PK has been terrible. So there, that opens up the avenue here. The Dallas power play hasn't been excellent, but you're going to see a lot of Hintz, Robertson, Johnson, Heiskanen, the kind of your usual suspects there. on that top power play unit this evening. So Dallas, from the power play standpoint, is kind of how they're probably going to have to attack things this evening. Because yeah, like the Wild are good defensively, but I agree. Like obviously, there's salary relief options throughout this Dallas Stars lineup. I just don't know. I just think that the Wild are going to play such a boring brand of hockey tonight that it's going to suck a lot of the fun out of this hockey game and a lot of the action. Any final thoughts now that I've corrected what I said about the Dallas power play? That was my bad. Scrolled a little too far.
Yeah, no, like I said, I mean, I think there's some reason to have interest here, but I'm definitely concerned about Minnesota really just turning this into a slog fest too. The pace score on this one isn't great either, 95.0. But again, trying to find ways to get different. I'm comfortable doing so with Dallas one tonight.
Yes. How low owned are they again? Where are they at?
Like 4%, 5%.
Super low owned. So definitely a lot of ways to get different on tonight's slate. There's, like I said, there's really only 3 games that are seeing a lot of ownership that feel like great spots, and the rest it's all just super low owned. And you try to figure out which one's the best. Utah and Colorado. The Utah Hockey Club have been playing some extremely good hockey as of late. Not only, I mean, just take a look here at the team chart. Not only good offensively, the offensive metrics been pretty reasonable, but the defensive metrics have improved drastically. Both teams have been getting pretty good goaltending as well. The Utah Hockey Club has been excellent on the power play, but they do run into a very good PK tonight. Also, the fact that they're good on the penalty kill will probably means that the Avs power play will continue to struggle. We'll kind of start there. 6th and 8th best power play advantages on the slate. The issue for the Utah Hockey Club is they're very undisciplined. While their penalty kill has been good, like we've talked about this a lot, like how long is it going to be before the Avs power play starts to figure it out? It just seems like they're just too good to not figure it out. But I have interest in this game as a whole. I don't know how much. I feel like I've been let down by the Avs a lot lately. I am a believer in Krell Vamilka. I think he's got game. He's played exceptionally well. Mackenzie Blackwood's obviously been outstanding for the Avs. I do think that this game, I bet the under in this one. I do think that it comes in lower scoring than the implied total suggests it will. But there isn't a lot of great spots on this slate. And this does feel like a game that, it has the highest total on the slate that can get there. So, Colorado 1 still grades out second best overall. They're 21,500. Honestly, too cheap, right? Lekkonen's 5,700. I think that's a fairly reasonable price for him. Nichushkin still feels too cheap at $5,500. Then you've got Utah 1. They're definitely still too cheap. Clayton Keller, $6,400 is probably $600 too cheap. Nick Schmaltz has been great, $4,500, definitely too cheap. Then the second line's been unbelievable lately with Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther. Dylan Guenther's still under 6K. Logan Cooley at 4,800. I mean, absolutely. Like, I'm interested in this Utah side of things and hoping that they can keep things rolling. Yes, Mackenzie Blackwood's been great, but I believe in this Utah team, and I do think that they can be productive tonight. So again, Utah 2 seeing 3% ownership as a whole, 3.8 on Cooley, 5% on Guenther. I'll be over the field there. The top line, Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz, I'll probably be around the field, around 10% of them. I just think that, they grade out 4th best overall. It's hard not to have interest in a 4th best line stack at 6% ownership, to be totally honest. And again, like, they have one of the highest implied totals on the slate at 3. So I feel okay. And then obviously getting to Colorado is always, fairly easy. That top line, their offensive metrics are just insane. So yeah, is Utah playing better defensively? Sure. But is Colorado by and large basically matchup proof? Yes. Seems that way. The second line, hard to have that much interest in them. Mikko Rantanen as a one-off is obviously a fine play, but their offensive metrics just aren't that great. The matchup is a little bit better, but not something that's going to just completely change my mind and take me off of Colorado 1. So definitely more of my interest coming in on the Colorado 1 side of things, but I'm happy to get over the field on Utah. Where do you come in on this game?
Yeah, I think this is a game that I'm going to be over the field on in terms of the top sixes of both teams. It feels like one of these games where it's just going to be back and forth between the two of them. You take a look at the matchup scores here. Not the greatest for either side. Utah 2 coming in with the best matchup score, but that pace score 100.3. That's a real nice mark there. Second on the slate to that Devils and Hurricanes game. So, Utah, it feels like offensively, they've really turned a corner here, especially as of late, finding some of that success that they had early on this season when they were just red hot coming out of the gate. they're a fun team, man. Like they really are. They're also fairly cheap here on this slate too, all things considering. Utah 1 coming in at $14,600. Utah 2, 13,300, 6% ownership, 3% ownership. It feels pretty easy to get over the field here on them. And then, as is kind of the status quo for me with Colorado 1, I'm always comfortable coming in over the field on them, projecting for only 7.3% to full stack them. I don't mind doing that whatsoever. Getting double the field on them. Arturi Lehkonen, interestingly enough, 3.6% projected ownership. It feels like with him, if he's not scoring goals, he's not really doing a whole lot. So you obviously run a little bit of risk there with playing him, but at $5,700, it's not too terrible. I think there's enough cheap options on this slate where you can full stack Colorado 1 and still find ways to get the rest of your lineup different. So it's pretty simple for me here in this one. I don't mind building around either of the power play units either. Utah, they've really turned a corner without their power play, obviously going up against a strong penalty kill here tonight. And Colorado, I think this is a really interesting way to kind of build around them. You can build around, the top 2 lines here, try and mix in a little bit of Cale Makar as well. They really need to figure it out at some point, and it feels like it's going to happen. And just given how much that Utah's in the penalty box, 3.7 times shorthanded per game here as of late, I really like this spot for the Colorado Avalanche. And again, I like it here for Utah as well. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, and that's kind of how I'm going to build my lineups around them.
Sorry, I was building my head-to-head lineup, coming back a little bit late. But yeah, this game definitely feels like one. I hope it's slow scoring because, again, I bet the under. But yeah, it's hard to think that this Avs power play is going to stay ice cold. Just talking about Cale Makar for a second. I know we're skipping ahead, but 7 shots on goal in each of his last 2 games. Just been on an absolute heater his last 5 games, as you might expect. But yeah, this is just a really fun game. You said it. Utah is just so much fun to watch, and they've been so good. Like, let me just pull up Logan Cooley's numbers. Like, I feel like I've got him in a lot of my season-long leagues, and it just feels like every night it's like, yep, another Logan Cooley night. The issue with him, obviously not the best floor, doesn't shoot the puck a ton because Dylan Guenther, like how are you supposed to shoot when you play with Dylan Guenther? He takes them all. 18 points, 5 goals, 13 assists in his last 15 games for Logan Cooley, but just 27 shots on goal. So not the best floor, but it doesn't really seem to matter. He seems to be getting there on a night-to-night basis. And then Dylan Guenther, again, obviously red hot start. Cooled off a little bit. He's been just sensational. Pointless in his last 2 games, but dating back to the, basically the last month, 18 points, 9 goals, 9 assists in his last 15 games. So they've been running hot for like a 15-game stretch here, that second line. So yeah, really, really think that Utah's in a fine spot again this evening. Any final thoughts before we get to the final game of the night?
No, this is going to be a fun one to talk about, I think.
San Jose and the Vegas Golden Knights. The Vegas Golden Knights, massive road favorites, -241 in San Jose tonight. Alexander Georgiev gets the start for the San Jose Sharks. Pretty high pace score. Really, really good matchups across the board here for the Vegas Golden Knights, unsurprisingly. And then you've got a decent matchup score for everybody except the top line of the Sharks. So the Sharks top line, which is going to be Granlund, Barclay, Goodrow, and Tyler Toffoli, if my memory serves me correctly. Wow, look at me go. Obviously, they had Celebrini there last game. They're going to put Goodrow there tonight, obviously in an effort to try to slow down Jack Eichel's line. And then you're going to see a lot of these second lines going head-to-head. So you're going to see a lot, basically middle 6 against middle 6. So William Karlsson's line is going to see a lot of that Celebrini line. And that Karlsson line, man, with Tomas Hertl, obviously he's coming back to San Jose tonight. And they intrigue me a lot this evening. I think that they're in a really, really interesting spot going up against this middle 6. So yeah, their matchup score doesn't look as good as Vegas won, but Vegas won. Obviously Eichel's been great. They grade out the number 1 line to target, $3,800. They're seeing massive amounts of ownership. But I think Vegas 2 coming in literally like a third of the ownership, much, much cheaper. They're super, super interesting tonight. The one thing that I think also makes them kind of fun to build around is I think people are going to struggle with it because Hurdle and Carlson are both centers on DraftKings tonight. So I think that people are going to run into some kind of roadblocks building around Vegas too, which is going to help keep their ownership down. I talked about the raw projections. They grade out 11th best on the team charts, which is great. But the raw projections in terms of value score, they're number 2, slightly ahead of Vegas 1 tonight. So they look like they're in a really good spot. That's a line that draws a lot of my interest tonight, just because I think it's a great source of getting to Vegas, getting action in on this game while avoiding some of that massive chalk that you see on Vegas 1. That's not to say that I don't have interest in Vegas 1, because I certainly do. Olofsson's been great at $3,800. He's a great value play, if not the best value play on the slate. Jack Eichel obviously has been awesome at $8,600. I don't love Mark Stone. He's basically floorless at $6,800, but I'll still get there. The public feels the same way, right? Seeing significantly less ownership than the other two. But their offensive metrics are great. Their matchup is great. The power play matchup tonight isn't ideal. The power play hasn't been great, but they do see a bad PK. So the power play matchup is good. Just their power play hasn't done much. Both teams struggling in special teams so far this season. Neither team projected for all that many power plays either. So this is obviously a very interesting game. Start with the Vegas side of things, because I do think that we probably both have some interest on the San Jose side of things as well.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas, I mean, you hit the nail on the head here. Like, I'm really interested in playing them tonight. Obviously, Alexander Georgiev between the pipes, not finding his game with the San Jose Sharks. Big shocker there. 3 games played so far, given up 11 goals against in them. So I think for that reason, you have interest in whoever's playing the Sharks when Georgiev was getting the start. I really like the look of this Vegas top line with Victor Olofsson up there. He's been great, and he's providing a really solid floor right now. 2.0 goals per hour of ice time, shooting 21.9%, 22%. That's unbelievable. But 8.9 shots on goal per hour of ice time. And that's a really nice mark to have at $3,800. Averaging 9.2 DraftKings points per game this season. I'm certainly going to be over the field on him, even though he's only, or even though he is coming in at 18.6% projected ownership, thanks to our friends at Roto Grinders for providing that for us. And Vegas too. I don't really think there's anything I can add to it beyond what you've said. The roster restrictions with 2 centers in that line doesn't really bother me whatsoever. I'm comfortable building around that. That's not going to deter me. And I don't think it should deter anybody else who's watching the show here from playing that Vegas second line. The San Jose Sharks, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, right? Because I feel like I'd have a lot of interest if Celebrini was up on the top line with Granlund and Toffoli. I don't think I'm going to be getting to Vegas or to San Jose 1 really whatsoever. It's a really ugly matchup score, and Barclay Goodrow really feels like a drag on that top line up there. The second line, though, that's where I've got a little bit more interest. Macklin Celebrini's cost is really coming up to $7K right now on the season so far. They are grading out as the 22nd best line to target on the slate, the best of any of the Sharks' 3 or 4 lines here. And I really like playing him with Fabian Zetterlund, which it looks like nobody is really doing here. Zetterlund projecting for 3% ownership versus Celebrini's 12. Zetterlund isn't like anything major to write home about. $4,100. He's averaging 9.4 DraftKings points per game this season. He takes a fair amount of shots on goal, 6.9 per hour, but he's finding ways to get there. So I don't mind building around a little bit of that San Jose too with some mini stacks of Celebrini and Zetterlund. I just don't know how crazy I'm going to go. Like, there seems like a lot of ownership coming in on this San Jose side of things. And I think it's a spot that I'm pretty comfortable fading in terms of the total ownership here. But I think I'll have, some parts of these guys in some lineups tonight.
Yeah, I think the part for me that is difficult is honestly just trying to figure out this Vegas Golden Knights team. They're one of the more confusing teams in the league, it seems. They're running red hot right now. They've won 8 of their last 9. They've only given up 6 goals in their last 4 games. Now, granted, they played the Wild, the Canucks, the Kraken, and the Ducks in those games. Their only loss came against the Oilers in mid-December, where they gave up 6 goals in that game. So, against bad teams, they're dominating right now. And I think it's safe to say the Sharks are a bad team. I think the one thing that's interesting, obviously now you've got, Celebrini by himself in that top power play unit. makes it a little bit more difficult. I was hoping Zetterlund might move up with William Eklund out. It's just not going to be the case. Liljegren's going to move up as they go back to a 4-1 power play. But yeah, I don't know how much how much I'm going to get to San Jose outside of Celebrini. I do like Zetterlund. Like his shot volume is really, really solid, but it's just very inconsistent. So like you run the risk of him getting like nothing at $4,100. But like he'll be in my player pool. So I'll be over the field on Zetterlund. And I'll probably be around the field with Celebrini at about 10% there. Cause yeah, like I don't think it's the best matchup, right? Like the Golden Knights have been very good defensively as of late, and against teams that aren't very good, they've been doing a fine job keeping them off the score sheet. Excuse me. These two teams did meet earlier in the season, late October. It was a 7-3 win for the Vegas Golden Knights, just to give you an idea of what could happen tonight. Pavel Dorofeyev that night, a goal and 2 assists. Mark Stone, a goal and 2 assists. Jack Eichel, a goal and an assist. Tomas Hertl, 2 assists. So a goal and an assist from William Karlsson. The big guns firing on all cylinders there. Nothing really coming on the Sharks side of things. They did score 3 goals that night. Obviously, goals from Granlund, but then some depth pieces as well. So I think it's fair to be very interested in the Vegas side of things. I think that getting to Vegas too is the way that I'm going to try to get most different tonight. I think that is the best avenue to get different on this slate, because they're, you get exposure to a really, really good matchup and at a significantly lower ownership. Okay, let's get to the defenseman. Did we talk about the power play of that game? Yeah, we did. Okay, let's get to the defenseman for tonight's slate. That is not where I'm supposed to be. Here we go. Value-wise, I already talked about Cam Fowler. I think Cam Fowler is a nice blue line play. He's been pretty solid playing the Brown 23, 24 minutes a night in St. Louis. Top power play unit as well. Thomas Hertl and Charlie McAvoy both grade out very, very well tonight. I think that they're fine plays. I like McAvoy a little bit more, obviously a little bit more expensive. Hanifin and Pietrangelo, I think, are good plays. Obviously, their price tags are fairly reasonable and a really good matchup setting for them tonight. Liljegren, top power play unit, playing around 20 minutes at $3,100, grades out well. Luke Hughes has been red hot. Again, don't love that game as a whole, but he grades out well. Love Shea Theodore tonight, $5,700. Not seeing that crazy amount of ownership either, so really feel good about him. Anybody else that really sticks out to you? I'm a little bit nervous about my boy Sam Malinsky now with Josh Manson back in the lineup. I don't know if he's going to see the minutes that is required. He's projected for 17 minutes, and he was around like 20 minutes more often. No, he was still around 18, 16 minutes. So it's still possible he gets there. His floor has been really, really solid, but don't feel quite as good about him with Manson back lineup. Anybody that really sticks out to you?
I think that some word vomit there. I think there's some pretty interesting plays defensively. Harley and McAvoy, as you mentioned, grading out really, really well tonight. I've got both of them in my DFO head-to-head lineup. A nice little preview there for you guys. I don't mind getting to some of these more expensive defensemen on the slate here tonight. Fire me up some Cale Makar, fire me up some Zach Werenski. I don't mind getting to Roman Josi as well. Obviously, they're going to project out really, really well on pretty much any given slate. I think especially with a guy like Werenski, you're getting exposure to the offense of the Columbus Blue Jackets without necessarily playing that top line. He's been just so great this year for Columbus. I mean, 8.0 shots on goal per hour of ice time, 0.7 goals per hour, 2.3 points per hour. Really like him here on this slate tonight. So I agree with you on a lot of these other guys. I'm surprised you didn't mention your boy Brett Pesce, $2,900. Still, for some reason, seeing his salary going down, despite being awesome out there, providing a really, really solid floor pretty much any single night.
I was leaving the low-hanging fruit for you, man. It's what friends do.
Thank you.
He's definitely a good play tonight. He gets there on that block volume, decent shot volume as well, and obviously going up against a Hurricanes team that loves to shoot the puck. The block volume should certainly be there. Obviously, his former team as well should be a little bit more motivated. I accidentally gave you a slight preview to my DFO head-to-head lineup there, but let's get to the goalies first, then we'll get to our head-to-head and the hat-trick pick challenge. Talked about it a little bit already. To me, it's pretty simple tonight. Jake Odger's in a great spot, $7,800, and love Joel Hofer. The rest of these goalies, I think there's some fine plays mixed in. I think Aiden Hill's obviously a fine play, grades out the best, but I just don't think that's necessary to get to that price tag. UC Saros, I think, is a fine play as well. Again, though, Ottinger just in such a good spot. So to me, like it's pretty simple. It's probably just gonna be a lot of Ottinger and Hofer, to be completely honest. Might mix in some other guys, but I just don't really see the reason to have to do it. The price tags are really great in solid matchups. So if I need to pay down, I'll go to Hofer. If I can get to it, I like Ottinger as kind of like my favorite play overall. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you on both those guys for sure. I don't mind a little Peter Mrazek here tonight going up against the Sabres. Again, just not buying into them all of a sudden having figured things out. Don't mind some Cam Talbot, some Joseph Wool in that game either. I think both are interesting plays. But Jake Onger, yeah, man, he just looks to be such a smash tonight at $7,800.
And let's get to today's hat trick pick challenge. Today's head to head. But if you want to participate in today's hat trick pick challenge, you can do so by commenting your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube. While you're there, smash the like button, help out the show. If you participate in today's hat trick pick challenge and your player scores a hat trick, we'll get you a $25 gift card to Nation Gear, which would be a great time. They've got a little bit of a Boxing Day deal going on there, so you can save a little bit of dough on your DFO swag. Zach, you won our most recent DFO head to head. So you get to go first. The season record now 24-22 in my favor, but close the gap a little bit. Who you got tonight?
Yeah, really like the look of my lineup here tonight. Goes without saying. Just feeling great about it on any single given night, even though it's not always the most productive. Eating some chalk here tonight and not afraid to do it. Pavel Zach and David Pastrnak for some Boston 1 exposure. Really like the matchup for them against Columbus. Jack Eichel and Victor Olofsson. Again, just a great spot for them. Getting a little different with some St. Louis 2, a mini stack of, or St. Louis 1 rather, mini stack of Buchnevich and Neighbor. Find a little bit of salary relief in there, a little bit of ownership relief as well. And then the 2 highest projected value plays for defensemen tonight, Charlie McAvoy and Thomas Harley, both fit in here just absolutely perfectly. And I was still able to get Jake Onger in at $7,800 and also leave $200 on the board. So not leaving a whole lot of money or anything like that, but really like the construction of this one here tonight.
Yeah, I went with a little bit of a funkier build as I built it live on the show, but I went the full Boston 1. Didn't really want to be honest with you. I don't love that chalk, but price tag is fine. And they're okay. They grade out well. I'm gonna trust the charts on this one. I don't feel great about the ownership, but in a cash game, they feel like an okay play. I originally went with Joel Hofer, but I had the room to get back up to Ottinger. Hurdle as kind of a one-off. I think that he's just a really nice price tag there on that top power play unit. Holloway, Fowler, kind of a mini stack. I just really like the value you get with both of those guys. And it left me enough to go with a little bit of a Colorado stack with Makar and Nichushkin. Both just have unbelievable floors and obviously really, really good ceilings. So yeah, like I think that game, high total. I think that getting exposure to Colorado here is fine tonight. Makar has been so good as of late. Nichushkin is just way too cheap. So from a cash game standpoint, I like both of them tonight. And yeah, there's your DFO head-to-head, the daily face-off, as we call it here on the daily face-off DFS report. Zach, since you won our last head-to-head, you get to make your hat-trick pick first. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to be going with Jesper Bratt here. 7 goals in his last 9 games against the Carolina Hurricanes. Again, like this New Jersey Devils 2 spot here tonight as a way to get different.
Okay, I'm gonna take the low-hanging fruit since you left me the low-hanging fruit because that's what friends do. I'm gonna go with David Pastrnak. So you guys know if you've joined the DFO DFS Discord, you know that I've basically never gotten Pastrnak right. So that means he will probably put up a goose egg tonight. So sorry for everybody that plays him this evening. And if you're fading him, I just did you a favor. So I'll go David Pastrnak. Again, comment your hat-trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube if you want to participate. And again, shout out to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing projected ownership for tonight's slate. If you want to get $20 off your first month of DFO or of RotoGrinders NHL Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. And yeah, also in there is our link for our DFO Discord. And you can join that for free. Come on in. We chat DFS all day long, provide all the late breaking news and warm-ups as well. I also try to provide a little bit of charts on the weekend for the Discord users. I don't post full charts. I try to do my best to provide projections and stuff on the weekend. So if you want to get access to those, you can do so by joining the Discord as well. And make sure you're smashing that like button. Over 1,200 live viewers right now. So give us some love if you're watching on YouTube or any of our other platforms. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Although it feels like a Monday, it is actually a Friday, which means this is our last show of the week. We'll be back on Monday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, with another live edition of the DFS Discord. Hope you all had a terrific holiday. Best of luck this evening. Hopefully you return with more money in your bankroll tomorrow than you had tonight. Until Monday, cheers.